Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Girls Get Rich podcast. I'm your host, Karen Yankovich, and I am really excited for you to meet our guest today. Sue Ryan and I met, and when we got into conversation about something, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a hot topic. The topic we're going to talk about today on our show, which I'm going to introduce to you in a minute, is something that comes up almost every single time I have a group coaching meeting with the people in my She's LinkedUp Accelerator program. Somebody's talking about this. Okay, so it's not talked a lot in the entrepreneur and the training world, but it's talked about when we get talking about real life and how that impacts what we're doing with our businesses. So I am going to introduce you now to Sue Ryan, and I'm going to bring her on. It's so good to have you with us here today, Sue.
Hi,
Thanks so much for being here. I'm
Thank you
great.
for
I'm
inviting
great.
me. Good.
Yeah. So you and I talked, and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this because it is such a big part. It's a big part of my life, which of course impacts my business. And it's such a big part of so many of my clients' lives and some of my entrepreneur friends' lives. And it's not talked about enough. So I wanted to talk about it. So before we get into the conversation, I'm going to paraphrase Sue's bio here because she's done a lot of things, but I want you to know all the good things about her. Sue's mission is to empower and embolden individuals to maximize the opportunities and potential change will bring. As a speaker, a change strategist, an author, an executive coach, caregiving coach, and mentor, there's a little hint about what we're going to talk about. She lives through two passions of her purpose. She guides and inspires leaders and emerging leaders committed to business growth and next level leadership to be great leaders of themselves and others. She guides non-professional caregivers to become confident, balanced, and supported in all phases of their caregiving journey. Sue specializes in helping individuals and teams thrive during times of change, working with them to clarify, align, develop, and implement solutions in highly competitive markets while creating their culture poised to face the challenges of change with resilience and right action in the direction of their goals. They successfully deliver long-term brand growth and value. Whether change is due to external factors such as market shifts, technology innovation, economic changes, or setting their sights on growth and expansion, understanding the dynamics and psychology of change enhances their ability for success. And that's what we're looking to do here. We want to talk about our topic today so that we're enhancing your ability for success. So, there's a lot more I can tell you here. And Sue, I'm going to let you introduce yourself but I'm going to just finish this with Sue's life motto, which is go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you've imagined, by Henry David Thoreau.
Absolutely.
So, Sue, that's a lot. You've done a lot of stuff, right? Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share the messages and to touch people's lives.
Well, I'm happy that you're here. So if you haven't guessed yet, the topic that Sue and I were talking about that I said, oh, I want to have this conversation on my show is caregiving. I am so blessed that my parents are so healthy, and they're, at the time that we're recording this, they are 87 and 89. My mom's going to be 88 in a couple of months, and my dad's going to be 90 in January. And they're healthy, generally healthy. And I come from a very long line of long living, healthy people, which is amazing, right? I grew up with 7 grandparents, 4 grandparents, and 3 great grandparents. So I was the oldest on both sides of my family. So I have spent a lot of years getting to know, I'm so unbelievably blessed to have known all 7 of these great, beautiful people. But I also watched the end of their lives, right? And I was there for all of that. I was probably in high school when I lost my first grandparent. So I grew up with all 7 of these amazing people in my life. I have a picture, actually, maybe I'll find it and put it in the show notes for this, of 5 generations when I had my son, my great grandmother, my dad, because it was my dad, no, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my dad, because it was my dad's mother and grandmother, me and my son. So I actually have a 5 generation picture. But now, as I'm building my business and my life, and my parents are needing more care in their lives, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge, and it's something that so many of the people that I speak to, so many of the entrepreneurs that I know, many of the people in our programs are dealing with, and it does affect how we run our businesses, right? So tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, Sue, how did this come to be a big part of what you support people with?
Yes. Thank you so much. The background for my life experiences is For the last 40 years, I was in roles of enterprise application software, either sales or support. And also in parallel with that, navigating roles of family caregiving support. It kept coming into my life from the time I was in my 20s. And while I was in during my professional career, I couldn't share it. So I'm doing that on the side while being in sales and traveling and a variety of other things. And so it was also before the internet started. So in my very early journeys, it was like being on an emotional roller coaster, often blindfolded. We didn't know what to do. There weren't places to go get information. People culturally didn't share about things. We would try things that worked one day, didn't work the next. Doctors weren't very helpful. And so I kept being on that journey. And over the years, I learned a lot, and I wanted to share with other people so that they could learn faster and more easily than I did. A few years ago, I said, it's time for me to share this message more. I created a program called The Caregiver's Journey. And because I would get so many questions from people about, well, how do you do this? And how do you do this? And how did you do this? And it was different phases of it. So I created a journey, and I'll share information with you about it. But none of what it was is that I wanted to teach family caregivers how to navigate their journey and get insights from it, from all the phases of their journey, and also to be able to embrace their caregiving journey while navigating other roles in their lives, because we don't quit when that part of it starts.
Right. Right.
The other thing then that came up is that because I had so much experience in business and business leadership, that I had the experience of what it was like with the conversation not being normalized in business. By the year 2030, more of us are going to be over the age of 65 than under the age of 65. So the number of care
Wow.
is increasing exponentially, while the number of care receivers is increasing exponentially, while that available pool of caregivers is diminishing.
Wow.
And yes, medicine is keeping us alive longer, but not necessarily healthy longer. So we have loved ones who are in need of care and often who don't have enough money to support the extension of their lives. So it's raising several different kinds of burdens. So I said it's appropriate for me with my background to now help leaders become aware of it, normalize the conversation, implement solutions to help, and help the people who are family caregivers, but stay in the business, but also help the businesses benefit from keeping them.
Right, right. It's so important. And it is, one of the reasons I went into this business is to support my family. Thinking more around when my kids start having kids, I want to be able to help, I want to be able to spend time with my grandkids. But we hear things like the sandwich generation, right? And I don't think there is a sandwich generation. I think the sandwich generation changes every year as people get older, right? It's not like this is, but I think maybe there's a chapter in your life, right? Maybe it's the sandwich chapter in your life where you're supporting your kids and your grandkids, but you're also supporting your parents, right? And that's kind of where I'm
And
at right
yourself.
now.
And yourself. So that's
And
kind of like
there we
your
go. There you
sandwich
go.
in the middle,
Right.
because like you're taking care of your own current and future needs. You still
Mhm.
have children's needs you're taking care of. And now you've got parents and loved ones you're taking care of. So you really are, whatever age bracket you're in, you're sandwiched in the middle.
Right, right. And it's not just me, right? Because as the CEO of my business, I have people that work for me who are also dealing with this,
Yes.
right? I remember one time about a month or two ago, um, my parents had a couple doctor's appointments or whatever. And my dad had something put in his eyes, so he couldn't drive. And driving in '89 is another whole conversation, right? But he couldn't drive. So my sister called me and she's like, "I had the morning, you get the afternoon. Dad's got an appointment, he can't drive." And I'm like, I have a full day. Like I can't just like I can do it if I have advance notice, right?
Right.
But it's hard for me to just drop everything. And I was able to do it that day, but I was like, okay, I need to start to manage some expectations here. And maybe
Yeah.
I should have been the one to do the morning because that was planned, right? Maybe I should be doing the planned ones because I can build that into my calendar. And my sister, who is retired, can and has a little bit more flexibility in her day at the last minute than I have. Maybe she does more of the last minute kind of things, right? But it's things that we have to think. Like it just didn't occur to me. I'm
Yeah.
happy, but I was like,
And
wait,
that's
I
a big
can't just
part of it. That's
control
part of the reason
everything.
that I'm doing what I'm doing is because, exactly to your point, it's like start thinking about these things. And
Right.
with some of the challenges, though, you don't know what it is you don't know to think about. So until that happened, you didn't know to think, well, we should be talking about this and planning this. And that's reasonable because you didn't go to school for it.
Right.
And it's not something you're not doing the Audible book on it. So it's not part of your when it becomes part of your lens, like when there's a diagnosis, you all of a sudden want the PhD in the diagnosis and a PhD in being a caregiver. And
Right.
it's like everything is not just obvious.
Right. Right. And it does become, at least for me, it does become a part of my identity. Right. So I have an identity as a mom and a grandmother, and I have an identity, lots of identities, right? Sister, partner, blah,
Sure.
blah, blah. But caregiver is becoming a bigger and bigger part of my identity because there are things like, I want my parents to be as independent as they can for as long as they can, right? So I'm
Mhm.
not looking to micromanage it, but I also feel like I have a responsibility to keep an eye on it. You know what I mean? To say, maybe see things that maybe they're not able to see so clearly, and just understanding what that line is and fitting
Yeah.
that in, kind of with my business, and understanding that my employees are going through the same
The
thing.
same thing. Well, and so here's another thing. So it's great to say you want your parents to be independent for as long as they can be. And I hear this so often. Well, you say that. Now, I'm not knocking you. I'm saying what so
Yeah,
many
yeah, no,
you
please.
say that.
I'm
And
here for the conversation.
you put a period at the end of that and you move forward. However, what you don't know is what does that actually look like? And
Yeah,
what does independent mean? And in the course of their lives, what does maintaining their independence look like? And how do you check to see are there areas where it's great for them to remain independent and areas where they would benefit from some support where they haven't asked for it or they haven't realized they need it? And there are things that you can be doing to help clearly define with them what that looks like so that, for example, you can start planning like, okay, when we've got appointments with mom and dad, let's figure out how to structure them and let's figure out how to schedule them and let's go with them because are they being their own best advocate? If one of them goes to
right,
the doctor, do we know what it is that they're being treated for so that they're taking their medicine and things like that? So it's shifting into all of those things. And when you say independent, it's continuously then auditing it and looking at
right,
what it is and evolving it and checking in so that they maintain the appropriate independence as long as possible. And gradually, sometimes it's immediate, but gradually start having support in the areas that bring the most value to them and to you.
right, right. And and again, I'll speak for myself, but I know that I'm speaking for many of the people listening, and certainly for many of my clients. There's also the factor of people don't really understand what I do, right? I don't get up in the morning, take a shower, get my car, and drive to an office, right? So Karen's home, right? So Karen can do it. Karen can do this. Like, so many of us that are entrepreneurs that maybe work from home or work for ourselves, we have these kind of invisible businesses to some of the people in our family, right? They don't really understand what we do, and they don't really necessarily need to, but it doesn't mean we're not working, right? It doesn't mean we're not working. And there's that piece of it too. So where do you, for me, creating those boundaries around work hours and non-work hours and communicating that to
Sure. Well,
the people around me.
that's exactly what it is. So part of it is when you're thinking about it, and especially if, let's pull back the sandwich generation. When you've got children whose schedules you're responsible for, and then you've got your parents and they've got schedules that periodically you're starting to become responsible for, and then you've got your own. What you want to be doing is proactively having as many conversations as possible so that you're
Right.
looking at what does this look like and let's talk about it and having them understand, okay, during these blocks of time, if you need something in any one of these blocks of time, I'm normally not available. My work is this and things like that. The physical location of my office may be in the home, but I am still working doing these things. But then also get from them, because so talk with everybody and have everybody be part of the conversation and figure out where they're. Then you also recognize, okay, we've got this amount of family support. You recognize where there are gaps. Fortunately, now we have things where food can be delivered and other people can be helping with supporting other things. But before you need something in it from urgently and there's a problem, proactively start having these conversations and look around and say, hey, when do you normally do this? And what are the things that are going on? And do the audits so that you're developing a team. And then you also want to make sure you're developing the team that's in the emergency team If something were to
Ooh,
happen to you and you're not available, if something were to happen to one of your parents and you need to be there with them,
right.
who do you call on in case of an emergency? So it's putting those things together so that you've got the proactive plan.
Yeah, that's so important. That's so important. Knowing that still there's always going to be flexibility. And honestly, I think back to when I first started working, when I first started, like my first real job was working for the phone company. There would have been no way I could leave in the middle of the day. And I don't say that like I worked for a union and we had all these rules. So unions gave us all these benefits, but also with those benefits came, okay, what you get this much time. And if I left in the middle of the day, it counted as an absence, and I was
Yes.
only allowed a certain number of absences. And absences were definitely, something that were black marks against what you did. And I wouldn't
Yes.
have been able to do it. Right. So thankfully we're having these conversations. I don't think we're having them enough, but we're having these conversations at
Yes.
least.
Well,
Right.
and
So
this is a huge part of that, Karen. What you just brought up to complement what we talked about
mhm,
before. The part of the reason that I'm so passionate about normalizing the conversation in business through my professional career. First of all, for 40 years, I've never touched a box that said, "Are you a family caregiver?" So in any role I ever had, that was never something that was asked.
right, right.
So there's that part of it. Then when we talk about wanting to be proactive and supporting our
Can I just stop you there for a second? And I wonder if you would check it if a box was there, because I wonder if you would think that it would impact your ability, your ability to land that position.
I'm getting right.
Okay.
That's the perfect lead into what I'm. That's the
Okay.
perfect lead into this. So you are a family caregiver and you are in business. And one of the things that happens when we talk about wanting, like on the family side, to have that, you also want to have that at work. For
Right.
example, if you've got someone who is going to be out on maternity leave, you work together as a team and say, okay, I anticipate I'm going to be gone here,
Right.
and so the team works around it. When you are an unidentified family caregiver in business and mom needs to go to the doctor and you have to take that leave, go out for a couple of hours or things like that, you're it's impacting your team. People don't know why you're gone because in an organization, and to your point, I watched other people who had identified as caregivers not get promotions, get laid off, not be felt
Right.
they couldn't be relied on, not
Right.
be given as much salary increase. And I wouldn't have been given the professional opportunities I was if they knew that in parallel to what I was doing that because I was in a role, and this is going away quite a bit, but I'm going to raise it in the season of life when this was an impact.
Mhm.
Women were not recognized in the roles I was in. They were traditionally roles for men. So anything that I would have done that would have said, well, I need to be able to take my dad to the doctor, it was like, well, she can't be relied on, like whatever.
Right.
So what we want to do then is, to your point, is we want to have companies starting at the executive level open the door to say we recognize the fact that there are these wonderful family caregivers who are supporting their family in this season, and they're also valuable assets we don't want to leave because about 40% of them leave the workforce and leave it early, which has got financial impacts and all different kinds of things. We want to support them staying. And so organizations have already recognized there are other people who have seasons in their lives and special identity groups to be recognized to have a better working environment. And so all that needs to be done is to flip the switch, put the box, and say, we want to embrace and support you as we are with other groups so that you can take that. So if you had to take mom to the doctor, okay, you can share with your team members, hey, I'll be available by phone. I'm taking mom to the doctor. This is what it is. And you've normalized it and people recognize it.
And as you're talking, I'm kind of running through my head. This is still often women taking on this role,
Oh, absolutely. The vast
right?
majority are women.
Yeah.
There are more and more men because,
There
again,
are, and that's really why I almost didn't bring it up because I'm not here, even though this podcast is called Good Girls Get Rich, I'm not here to bash men. I love that men are stepping into a bigger role with some of these things,
yeah,
but I do think that still it's another place that women are losing opportunities, maybe.
they are. Yeah,
Um,
they are. And part of the thing is because with that pool of available caregivers shrinking,
mhm,
more women are traditionally and currently still stepping into that role of absorbing the responsibilities of family caregiving on top of all of the other responsibilities. So
right.
while more and more men are coming in because the exponential growth of it, it's predominantly still women, and it's a big burden.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, what do we, how do we lessen the impacts to our businesses
Sure.
and build in the support to our teams and our employees?
Such a powerful, powerful question. And for many companies, it's a very straightforward answer. If an organization already has benefits and already has employee assistance programs, so they've recognized the value of that in their business, it's taking, and I've got all kinds of statistics and numbers, and there's all kinds of foundational information about it. But it's having the business executive, the leaders of the organization, who are also in roles of caregiving themselves, or their spouses, or they've got a loved one who is, and saying, we embrace it, we recognize it, we acknowledge it. We want you. We're going to ask how many of you there are here in our business. We're going to do a survey. We want you to feel safe identifying that you are a family caregiver so that we can explore ways that we can be providing you support. And they all exist. This is the great thing. The legal process, the organizational process in most companies for different benefits offerings for EAP already exists. You're just adding one more identity group, which is family caregiver, to it. So solutions can be implemented very quickly once the executives, from the top down, the executives open the door to normalizing the conversation, embracing the fact that people are navigating in this season of their lives roles of family caregiving support.
And I bet if you were incorporating that even into your hiring process, that this is a part of what we support. We want to support this in your life. That would be amazing if you were actually talking about that in the hiring process. And I think that, and you mentioned this before we hit record on this, that it almost fits right into like their DE&I initiatives, right? Like it's their initiatives to support this. And I think about that, and I'm trying to be positive about the possibilities that's happening, but also feeling a little bit like, and then just it's got to then, like you said, it's got to come from the top, but then it's got to infiltrate, right? It's got to infiltrate, because there's going to still be that manager level or somebody, right, that can struggle with that. But I want to kind of refocus this a little bit then on the entrepreneurs, right? You're an entrepreneur. You've got a couple of contractors, maybe one or two payroll people, right? I think that's a bigger, our audience is probably more of those people.
Absolutely.
Or even just women that are in corporate, and they're looking to get those raises and get those big positions, right? And maybe they can make the impact to the companies with these kinds of initiatives. How do we support them?
So that's really two different kinds of questions. So let's pick one of those. Do you want to start with the entrepreneur?
Let's start with the entrepreneurs. Yeah, let's keep focused on that for now.
All right, let's stay focused on the entrepreneur for now. So often as an entrepreneur, we may be a solopreneur. So it's on us. So the roles of family caregiving support get added to everything else. And on top of that, they're often, because we're talking on the sandwich generation, we often are also incurring financial considerations because they're outliving their savings. Their medical expenses are out there. The way that they budgeted for their lives didn't include all this. So you've got the demands of the time, and you've also got the financial demands. And so again, when you look at this, you want to be creative and start thinking outside the box and start creating teams of people. And I know a variety of solopreneurs who have created a support group of their own where they support each other navigating the responsibilities of mom's got to go to the doctor, dad's got to have this. And
brilliant.
So they work with each other to support each other. They can be different industries, they can be all different things, but the commonality they have is that each of them is a family caregiver. Then on the financial side of it, there's also the creativity of they've got like a daycare kind of situation, or you've got a way where one family has somebody, they find somebody who could share time with multiple people. Then another opportunity, and this is really excellent, is you leverage technology. There are many times when the kinds of things where we would be stepping in to support our loved one, especially if we're doing these really valuable audits, the technology helps them maintain their independence longer while giving us peace of mind. So, for example, medication is a big one. There is wonderful technology that helps with getting the medication administered, making sure that it is being taken, alerts to remind them. You can have cameras installed so that you
Mhm.
can be observing it. You can have like on Monday, somebody's going to be calling everybody. Somebody else is going to be calling on Tuesday. So you've got ways of doing that. You do audits of the pantry to see how healthy the food and how fresh the food is, and audits of the home. What are they able to be keeping up with? And then in the areas, so you can have a group of people go shopping. Here's my grocery list. And one person goes grocery shopping one week and they get the groceries and bring them around. So they come up
Oh,
with
interesting. So
creative.
they're supporting each other, kind of like we supported when our kids were in daycare. Whose turn is it to pick up all the
Exactly.
kids today? Right.
Who's trying to, so
Right.
it's like so
Interesting.
many of the things in caregiving are
Yeah.
similar to if you raised children, the different
Yeah.
kinds of considerations you had and the creativity that you get for that. The other thing, and this is so huge, 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 huge. And I emphasize huge because in the beginning, when I would have benefited from it and didn't know what I didn't know, I didn't have it. So I know what it's like not to have it. You never need to be alone. You never need to struggle to not know what to do. There are resources out there. You can do searches. There, in whatever the diagnosis is, there are communities of people. They've got creative ideas. You can create Facebook groups. You can join Facebook groups that already exist. So there are people out there that can help you navigate the complexities of the journey and reduce some of the impacts in different ways you can. The other thing is when we talk about leveraging family members, the family dynamics are unique for everybody's
Right.
family. But when
Right.
you bring everyone together for a common goal and say, what does this look like when we're all doing this together? Even if as a family, relationally, you're not in the best shape with each other, this is bigger than you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because it is that dual role, right, of business professional and caregiver.
On top of
And
everything else. So it's not like,
right, right,
it's not like when you go to work, you don't leave caregiver at home. And when you're
right,
caregiving, you don't leave business and you don't leave being a mom. You don't leave anything else. It's not like you
right,
flip a switch.
right, right. Yeah, so important, so important. I think about like, because I have a little bit of a geek brain, and I think about like the tech available in all of this. And I have like, hopefully my parents aren't listening or nobody's going to share this with them, but I have like Google Docs and or documents like that. Like when they're like, oh, I can't log on, help me get on. I'm like, I like write that password down somewhere because someday I'm going to need all this because they are so determined to hang on to their independence. But then sometimes they need the help, but they're in that in between stage, right? Where they
Yeah.
don't want the help, but they sometimes need the help. And
Well, and you
and
can do it like for that work.
so everywhere I can that I can leverage some technology, I do,
You
or I'll
should,
take some
and that's
screenshots or whatever. Right.
the peace of mind thing. You sit
Right.
down and do an audit with them. Not a lot of our parents have got the really organized thing with passwords, but you do it. You
Oh,
say for peace of
you're right
mind.
now.
If anything, God
Yes.
forbid, anything happened to you, we'd want to make sure that we could get into
Can I
your.
just tell you, I can stop you right there. There's no way my parents would be open to that conversation. There is no way. And I'm saying this not because maybe there's somebody listening. They're not ready for these conversations because they have each other for one thing. So that's a little bit unique in their generation. They still have each other. And they're like, no, if something happens to me, dad knows. If something happens to dad, mom knows, but they don't know, and so it's a struggle to be able to support them when they know they need the support, they don't want the support, and they're struggling to hold on to their independence. Right. So it's yes, I would like the communication to be there, but they're not ready for that communication.
So I would encourage you to shift the way that you have the conversation
Okay.
and shift the language of it. For example, if they want to maintain their independence longer, if for any reason they needed to go into the hospital and you needed access to what their medications or something like that was, you'd be able to support them better. You come up with a thing that helps them and shift that conversation and say, listen, you might be healthy forever. You're still supposed to have it. I'm supposed to have it. I'm making sure
Right.
you've got it. So
Right.
if one of you has it, then you both have it. and it's current. So however you do it, get creative about ways to approach it. And the sooner you approach it, way before they need it, but be talking about it and say, hey, you guys, hopefully this isn't for 10 more years. However,
Right.
it's
Right.
good for us, so to be good for you. We're all as a family going to do it so we can help each other just in case there's anything that happens.
Right. Right. Because it is, managing that is a little bit like managing my business, right? Like, what are the strategies? What are I often talk when I teach sales. I'm like, you're selling when you're trying to get your partner to load the dishwasher. Like, it's not just about getting in, and part of that kind of goes into how you handle how do you deal with your family, right? You're the leader of your business, you're the leader of your family, and there may be co-leaders, right? Doesn't mean you're the king or the matriarch, right? But there is a leading. Being a leader
Sure.
is an important, I think, an important piece of that identity, the identity of being a caregiver.
And as a leader, what you do is you figure out how to lead your team. And
Right.
also, as a leader, you recognize you can't say and make one message that everybody's going to hear in the same way.
Right.
As a leader, you figure out how to communicate the message. You figure out the ways of communicating, and you also recognize you don't communicate at one time. You communicate it over and over and over. And so
Right.
when you're working with a family dynamic, it's the same kind of thing. The conversations are going to be different, the approaches are going to be different, and yet you keep talking about it, you bring stories up, you keep sharing about things. But part of another piece of it is the more that you think of the things that are proactive to help be doing ahead of time, that you've at least had conversations with. Like, you can be having conversations with the rest of your family about, well, what do we do in case of this?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the kinds of things? So other kinds of things you can be doing to prepare. And then not having the conversation surrounding the passwords at all be anything about independence. It's about security. Is that, mom and dad, here are the things we're doing. We want to make sure that you're as current with what you're doing with security as we are. For example, we've changed our passwords. We've got two-factor authentication. We're doing these things so that there's no one who could accidentally get into our financial information. We want to make sure that you've got access to all of those things as well. Could we sit together and do something like that to support you so that you don't ever have to worry about it? It's just
Yeah.
different ways of approaching it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Well, it sounds like you are a wealth of resources. So tell us a little bit about what kinds of ways do you work with people on this?
I work with people in several different ways. One of the things that I do is I have a program that helps family caregivers navigate their caregiving journey called the Caregiver's Journey. And I coach and I speak and I mentor individuals navigating their journey. The other thing I do now is I take these messages into businesses to talk with business leaders,
So
to go
important.
to business conferences and raise this to their level of awareness. I've got tons of statistics and numbers and things, but also solutions. I'm not bringing the problem. I'm
Right.
making them aware that there's an issue, and
Right.
also in bringing solutions because they exist, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're a Fortune 1 company. So it's that. So I'm a passionate communicator, as you can tell. So speaking is
Yeah.
something I love to do. I want to come in and speak to everyone's businesses. Then I can also bring in and help get started in businesses, help them raise their level of awareness. I have access to a number of resources they can use, not mine. I know there's no one of us who's all the solution, but get them started and have them know different places they can explore to become part of the solution. The big thing is a variety of different ways to help normalize the conversation and have that. So whether it's speaking or coaching or solutions. And I'm also in the process of writing another book and launching a podcast.
Awesome. Awesome. And you have a complimentary, like you have a 7-day
I do.
version of your caregiver. Tell us a little
I
bit
do.
about that. How can we access
Yes.
that?
I
And we'll
what I
put
did is
all the links to everything, obviously, in the notes for this
yes.
episode.
One of the things I did, because I really care about getting this out. I'm not doing this to become wealthy with the program. I created the program, and I'm giving you a 7-day complimentary copy of the entire program,
Oh,
not like
wow.
a lesson of it. It's the entire program. So everything that in the program, and you can use it for 7 days.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. We'll put a link in the notes to show how to do that. So
Right.
what's next for you? Your book is next, right? What else is on deck for you in
Yes.
your journey? What should we be looking out for?
Several things that are coming out. I am part of a book called The Caregiver's Advocate. It's going to be launching early in July. A friend of
Awesome.
mine who we work together, and we've been friends for a number of years. We're creating a podcast called The Caregiver's Journey, Practical Tips and Candid Conversations, where we talk about just these same kinds of things. She's been navigating the journey with her husband for a number of years. And then I'm also creating a book series called The Caregiver's Journey. So it's a book. So each one of them smaller on each of the phases of the journey.
Amazing, amazing. Well, you know what, Sue, I think this is a big part. Like I said, when we started having this conversation, it was remarkable to me when I realized a couple years ago that almost every call that I have with my students, somebody is in some stage of I'm at my parents, or I'm dealing with this, or I'm dealing with that. And it is such a big part of what I'm seeing in the entrepreneur's journey,
Yeah.
or the businesswoman's journey, that I think I'm so glad we're talking about it, and I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing for it, so that we can talk about it more, and we can feel supported around it instead of hiding and not checking that box when the box comes up because we feel like it's going to impact our success. And
Yes.
one of the things that we really stand for here in She's Linked Up in our Good Girls Get Rich podcast is women supporting other women, right? I mean, and because that rising tide that lifts all boats. I love when you talked about creating little coalitions of support, whether it's shopping support, or I was actually thinking like, maybe you're in a mastermind and you can kind of just have one conversation that's like, hey, can we just kind of put it out there that if there's an emergency and I need somebody to step in to handle, like, I have a weekly group call for my program, right? And if I'm not on it, it's planned and there's an organization around it, right?
Yeah.
Like, can we have a plan that if I have an emergency and have to run out, I can count on one of you guys to come in as a guest host for that, and you could bring your own expertise. Like, I love even just having that little bit of conversation in there, because I think that I never even occurred to me, and I think it's so smart, because I think about this as as an entrepreneur, as I create my plans and programs, I'm sure I am so committed to being visible and being a big part of my programs and conversations. I want to get to know every single one of my students, and I want to be a part of it, but also I want to make sure that I am not chaining myself to this office, because I do have these other commitments, right? So I'm always looking to find that balance. And I think what you suggested in supporting each other and creating these groups of support around these kinds of things is so smart. I love that. And I highly recommend everybody listening, bring that topic up in your next mastermind conversation, and just kind of you have to have one conversation about it. Hey, would you guys be up for, just kind of put it out there so that there's no surprise if and when the time comes that you have to call on one of them for it. That's so brilliant.
Thank you. It's getting creative. It's thinking outside the box, which is what we do,
Yep.
and finding new ways to apply things we've already learned. Like you said, well, as moms, we did that with kids.
Right.
You know,
Right. And
we have of it. Yeah.
My goal is for more women to have more money. And if we're constantly feeling behind the eight ball because we're being pulled in so many different directions, it's just a more difficult journey for us. And I think having this conversation simplifies that journey and helps more women become wealthy women of influence. And I think I know that's what the world needs. I know that's what my world needs. And I think, I love to surround myself with, women that are normalizing the kinds of things that are needed in this conversation, but also so that I can run a highly successful business and be a very wealthy woman. I think you can do it all. It doesn't mean, bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan, right? It means those boundaries, right? Creating those boundaries and knowing that you can get support for some of these things and not do all of this yourself.
Well, and getting creative about, okay, who is supposed to bring home the bacon and who does fry it in the pan of our lives, because there are different seasons, and how do we collaborate on that so that whatever it's going to look like, we can do it in the best way possible, and not feel that just tremendous, overwhelming burden of you don't know what to do, you're overwhelmed, and there's no clarity, and there's so many things coming at you.
And there's a sense too, when you're raising your kids, there's a sense of until they grow up, right? Or as they get older, it becomes easier. But when you're faced with doing this with your parents, what we're faced with is this is not going to get easier. This is more likely going to be more difficult and more stressful and need more of my time, or potentially need more of my time as time goes on. So there's a little bit of that unknown too that's stressful and that could impact our decisions. So thank you for being there and helping us navigate these things so that we can continue to build our careers in a way that feel simple and easy, and also be there for the people that we want to be there for.
Well, and to your point, one last point I'll make, and I'm so
Please.
respectful of all of this, is that as we are taking on additional responsibilities to care for our loved one, what would be preferred is that we don't have resentment coming up because
Right.
of all of the other things. So the more that we address things ahead of time, the more that we create plans, the more that we get creative, the more we recognize it's reasonable. We don't know the answers and we don't need to do this alone. It helps us not become resentful of this journey, which, to your point, for many of us, it continues to grow and grow and grow because our loved ones are living longer and longer and longer.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for being here, Sue. I really appreciate this. And if you've listened before, or if you love what you're hearing today, we would love to hear from you. So make sure that you're following Good Girls Get Rich on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. A review would be great. Tell us what you think about this episode. And of course, take a quick screenshot right now. Take a quick screenshot of the show, share it on your social media, tag me, tag Sue. I'll put all of her links below. And then we will be able to share your post with our audiences, right? And that's how we all get more visibility. We can get more people to hear these messages, and we can collectively be lifting up more women in the world so that we have a bigger voice individually and collectively, right? In the show notes, there's also a link for SpeakPipe. So if you can leave me an audio message there, I love getting your audio messages because I get to respond personally to every single one of them. So if you just go to the links below, and you'll see everything we talked about here today. And it feels so good to be having another conversation with another woman whose goal truly is to just lift more women up. And I'm going to kind of leave us with that today. So thanks so much, Sue, for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you for inviting me to share. I appreciate it.